A United States Science Center Museum Guide. Chapter 1. Science Center Museums by U.S. State. Some Science Center Museums by U.S. State. Alabama. Alabama Museum of the Health Sciences. Science/Technology Center/Museum Birmingham, A.L. Madison Science Museum. Huntsville, A.L. Arkansas. Mid-America Science Museum, Hot Springs, A.R. Museum of Discovery, Arkansas's Museum of Science and History, Little Rock, A.R. Arizona. Arizona Science Center, Phoenix, A.Z. Flandreau Science Center and Planetarium, Tucson, A.Z. Alfie Norville Gem and Mineral Museum, Tucson, A.Z. California. Columbia Memorial Space Center, Downey, CA. California Science Center, Los Angeles, CA. Aerospace Museum of California, McClellan, CA. Shabu Space and Science Center, Oakland, CA. Roseville Utility Exploration Center, Roseville, CA. SMUD Museum of Science and Curiosity, Mozac, Sacramento, CA. Randall Museum, San Francisco, CA. Exploratorium, San Francisco, CA. The Tech Interactive, San Jose, CA. Colorado. Space Foundation Discovery Center, Colorado Springs, CO. Wings Over the Rockies Air and Space Museum, Denver, CO. Mines Museum of Earth Science, Golden, CO. Connecticut. Discovery Science Center and Planetarium, Bridgeport, CT. Connecticut Science Center, Hartford, CT. District of Columbia. National Geographic Museum, Washington, D.C. National Air and Space Museum, Smithsonian Institution, Washington, D.C. Florida. Museum of Discovery and Science, Fort Lauderdale, FL. Emerald Coast Science Center, Fort Walton Beach, FL. Cade Museum Foundation. Science/Technology Center/Museum Gainesville, FL. Museum of Science and History, Mosh, Jacksonville, FL. Philip and Patricia Frost Museum of Science, Miami, FL. Museum of Science and Industry, Tampa, FL. Georgia. David J. Sensor CDC Museum, Atlanta, GA. Telus Science Museum. Cartersville, GA. Coca-Cola Space Science Center, Columbus, GA. Iowa. Science Center of Iowa, Des Moines, IA. Illinois. Museum of Science and Industry, Chicago, IL. Adler Planetarium, Chicago, IL. Kansas. Cosmosphere, Hutchinson, KS. Kentucky. The Aviation Museum of Kentucky, Lexington, KY. Owensboro Museum of Science and History, Owensboro, KY. Louisiana. Weddell Williams Aviation and Cypress Sawmill Museum, Patterson, LA. Massachusetts. Museum of Science, Boston, MA. Maryland. Discovery Station at Hagerstown, Inc., Hagerstown, MD. National Museum of Health and Medicine, Silver Spring, MD. NOAA Heritage Program, Silver Spring, MD. Michigan. Science Gallery Detroit, East Lansing, MI. Midland Center for the Arts. Science/Technology Center/Museum Midland, MI. Air Zoo, Portage, MI. Minnesota. The Bakken Museum, Minneapolis, MN. Pavek Museum of Broadcasting, Minneapolis, MN. Science Museum of Minnesota, St. Paul, MN. Missouri. Science City at Union Station, Kansas City, MO. St. Louis Science Center, St. Louis, MO. Montana. Exploration Works, Helena, MT. North Carolina. Discovery Place Science, Charlotte, NC. North Dakota. Fargo-Moorhead Science Museum, Fargo, ND. Nebraska. Kiewit Luminarium, Omaha, NE. New Mexico. National Museum of Nuclear Science and History, Albuquerque, NM. Explora Science Center and Children's Museum, Albuquerque, NM. Bradbury Science Museum, Los Alamos, NM. Nevada. Atomic Museum, Las Vegas, NV. Nevada Discovery Museum, Reno, NV. New York. Buffalo Museum of Science, Buffalo, New York. Science Center, Ithaca, New York. Museum of Innovation and Science, MISI, Schenectady, New York. Museum of Science and Technology. Science/Technology Center/Museum Syracuse, New York. Ohio. Bonshoft Museum of Discovery, Dayton, O. Imagination Station, Toledo, O. Oklahoma. Science Museum Oklahoma, Oklahoma City, OK. Tulsa Air and Space Museum and Planetarium, Tulsa, OK. Oregon. Evergreen Aviation and Space Museum, McMinnville, or Oregon Museum of Science and Industry, Portland, or Pennsylvania. The Franklin Institute, Philadelphia, PA. Carnegie Science Center, Pittsburgh, PA. South Dakota. World Fossil Finder Museum, Hot Springs, SD. Tennessee. The Muse Knoxville, Knoxville, TN. Adventure Science Center, Nashville, TN. American Museum of Science and Energy, Oak Ridge, TN. Hands-on Science Center, Tullahoma, TN. Texas. Texas Air and Space Museum, Amarillo, TX. Parrott Museum of Nature and Science, Dallas, TX. Oscar E. Monig Meteorite Gallery, Fort Worth, TX. The Health Museum, Houston, TX. Space Center Houston, Houston, TX. Science Spectrum, Lubbock, TX. San Antonio Museum of Science and Technology, SAMSIT, San Antonio, TX. Virginia. Science Museum of Virginia, Richmond, VA. Vermont. Montshire Museum of Science, Norwich, VT. Washington. The Museum of Flight, Seattle, WA. West Virginia. Clay Center for the Arts and Sciences of West Virginia, Charleston, WV. Wyoming. The Science Zone, Mills, WY. Science Center Museum websites from aam-us.org/about-museum/find-a-museum. uab.edu/amhs. madcimuseum.org. midamericamuseum.org. museumofdiscovery.org. azscience.org. flandrau.org. gemma-and-mineralmuseum.arizona.edu. columbiaspace-science.org. californiascience-center.org. aerospaceca.org. shabuspace.org/index.htm. roseville.ca.us/explore. visitemosac.org. randallmuseum.org. thetech.org. discoverspace.org. wingsmuseum.org. mines.edu/museum. discoverymuseum.org. ctsciencecenter.org. nationalgeographic.org/events/visit. arandspace.si.edu. mods.org. ecscience.org. cademuseum.org. frostscience.org. mosi.org. cdc.gov/museum. telesmuseum.org. ccssc.org. cowa.org. msichicago.org. adlerplanetarium.org. cosmo.org. aviationky.org. louisianastatemuseum.org/museum/cypress-sawmill-weddell-williams-aviation-museum. mos.org. discoveriesatation.org. medicalmuseum.mil. noaa.gov. detroit.sciencegallery.com. midlandcenter.org. airzoo.org. thebakken.org. pavekmuseum.org. smm.org. unionstation.org/science city. slsc.org. explorationworks.org. discoveryplace.org. Fargo-Moorhead %20 Science %20 Museum. kiewitluminarium.org. nuclearmuseum.org. explorer.us/en. lanl.gov/museum. nationalatomistestingmuseum.org. nvdm.org. sciencebuff.org. sciencenter.org. miscellaneousi.org. most.org. boonshoftmuseum.org. imaginationstoledo.org. sciencemusumoc.org. tulsamuseum.org. evergreenmuseum.org. omsi.edu. fi.edu. carnegiescienceCenter.org. readingscienceCenter.org. worldfossilfindermuseum.com. themuseknoxville.org. adventuresci.org. amsc.org. hoc.org. Texas Aerospacemuseum.org. parrotmuseum.org. monarchmuseum.tcu.edu. thehealthmuseum.org. spacecenter.org. sciencespectrum.org/home.shtml. samsat.org. smv.org. montshire.org. theclaecenter.org. thesciencezone.org. exploratorium.edu. themosh.org. owensboromuseum.org. museumofflight.org. Chapter 2. A list of 800 plus science museum websites at Museum Susa. A.D. Buck Museum of Science and History. Tonkawa, Oklahoma. AWA. Electronic Communication Museum. antiquewireless.org. Hilton, New York. AHA. A Hands-on Adventure, a Children's Museum. AHA4KIDS.org. Lancaster, Ohio. Alden B. Dow Museum of Science and Art. mcfta.org. Midland, Michigan. Abilene Zoo. abilenezoo.org. Abilene, Texas. Adams Grist Mill. Bellows Falls, Vermont. Adventure Aquarium. adventureaquarium.com. Camden, New Jersey. Aerospace Museum of California. aerospacemuseumofcalifornia.org. McClellan, California. Agricultural Research Service Science Hall of Fame. ars.usda.gov/careers/HOF. Beltsville, Maryland. Ahwahnee, California. Air Force Flight Test Center Museum. aftcmuseum.org. Edwards Air Force Base, California. Air Force Space and Missile Museum. afspacemuseum.org. Patrick AFB, Florida. Airzoo Aviation History Museum of Kalamazoo. airzoo.com. Portage, Michigan. Alabama Museum of the Health Sciences, UAB. uab.edu/historical/museum.hdm. Birmingham, Alabama. Allen Bible Visitor Center. home.nps.gov/lame/planyarvisit/visitorcenters.hdm. Boulder, Nevada. Alaska Museum of Natural History. alaskamuseum.org. Anchorage, Alaska. Amazement Square, the Reitmeyer Children's Museum. amazementstour.org. Lynchburg, Virginia. American Museum of Science and Energy. amsc.org. Oak Ridge, Tennessee. American Orchid Society. AOS.org. Coral Gables, Florida. American Philosophical Society. amphilsoc.org/exhibitions. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. American Textile History Museum. athm.org. Lowell, Massachusetts. Angels Camp Museum. angelscamp.gov. Angels Camp, California. Ann Arbor Hands-On Museum. autom.org. Ann Arbor, Michigan. Antelope Valley California Poppy Reserve. parks.ca.gov. Lancaster, California. Appalachian Trail Museum. atmuseum.org. Gardner, Pennsylvania. Apple Farm Mill House. applefarm.com. San Luis Obispo, California. Aquarium of Niagara. aquariumofniagara.org. Niagara Falls, New York. Aquarium of the Pacific. aquariumofpacific.org. Long Beach, California. Aquarium of the Bay. aquariumofthebay.org. San Francisco, California. Arizona Science Center. Phoenix, Arizona. Arkansas Tech Museum. atu.edu/museum. Russellville, Arkansas. Arthur L. Purcell Observatory. Tulare, California. Ashfall Fossil Bed State Historical Park. ashfall.unl.edu. Royal, Nebraska. Ashland County Historical Society. ashlandhistory.org. Ashland, Ohio. Astronaut Ellison S. Onizuka Space Center. hawaiimuseums.org/mc/is_hawaii_astronaut.hdm. Kailua Kona, Hawaii. Atlanta History Center. atlantahistorycenter.com. Atlanta, Georgia. Atlantic Wildfowl Heritage Museum. aum.org. Virginia Beach, Virginia. Attleboro Area Industrial Museum, Inc. industrialmuseum.com. Attleboro, Massachusetts. Audubon Canyon Ranch. egret.org. Stinson Beach, California. Aurora Fossil Museum Foundation, Inc. aurorafossilmuseum.com. Aurora, North Carolina. Austin Nature and Science Center. ci.austin.tx.us/ansc. Austin, Texas. Avampato Discovery Museum at the Clay Center for the Arts and Sciences. theclaycenter.org. Charleston, West Virginia. Avenir Museum of Design and Merchandising. avenir.colorado.state.edu/index.aspx. Fort Collins, Colorado. BNL Science Museum. Upton, New York. Baltimore and Ohio, BNO, Railroad Museum. borail.org. Baltimore, Maryland. Baltimore Museum of Industry. Baltimore, Maryland. Barren River Imaginative Museum of Science. brimsbg.org. Bowling Green, Kentucky. Barrow Foundation Museum. Eola, Texas. Baxter Springs Heritage Center and Museum. baxterspringsmuseum.org. Baxter Springs, Kansas. Bay Area Discovery Museum. baykidsmuseum.org. Sausalito, California. Bay Model Visitor Center. spn.usaki.army.mil/missions/recreation/baymodelvisitorcenter.aspx. Sausalito, California. Bayer Museum of Agriculture. agriculturehistory.org. Lubbock, Texas. Bayernhof Museum. bayernhofmuseum.com. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Bel Air Toy and Plastic Brick Museum. danstoymuseum.blogspot.com. Bel Air, Ohio. Bergen Museum of Art and Science. bergenmuseum.com. Teaneck, New Jersey. Berkshire Botanical Garden. berkshirebotanical.org. Stockbridge, Massachusetts. Berkshire Museum. berkshiremuseum.org. Pittsfield, Massachusetts. Bernhardt Museum Complex. placer.ca.gov/departments/facilities/museums/local museums/bernhardt.aspx. Auburn, California. Big 4 and Dingley Spice Mill Buildings. csrmf.org/visitor-information/other-california-state-park-s attractions-in-old-steam-coffee-and-spice-mill. Sacramento, California. Black Hills Institute of Geological Research, Inc. bhigr.com. Hill City, South Dakota. Blandy Experimental Farm, Yuba. virginia.edu/Blandy. Boyce, Virginia. Blue Hill Observatory Science Center. bluehill.com. Milton, Massachusetts. Bluedorn Science Imaginarium. groutmuseumdistrict.org. Waterloo, Iowa. Bob Campbell Geology Museum. virtual.clemson.edu/groups/geomuseum. Clemson, South Carolina. Bodine State Fish Hatchery. Mishawaka, Indiana. Bolac Electromechanical Museum. Farmington, New Mexico. Ballinger County Museum of Natural History. bcmnh.org. Marble Hill, Missouri. Bolsa Chica Ecological Reserve. bolsachica.org. Huntington Beach, California. Bombay Hook National Wildlife Refuge. fws.gov/refuge/Bombay_Hook. Smyrna, Delaware. Bunshoft Museum of Discovery. boonshoftmuseum.org. Dayton, Ohio. Boston Athenaeum. bostonathenaeum.org. Boston, Massachusetts. Bowie State University Center for Natural Science, Mathematics, and Nursing. bowie-estate.edu/about/admin-fin/office-of-facilities-management/capital-projects/nsmn-center. Bowie, Maryland. Box Elder Museum. boxeldermuseum.org. Brigham City, Utah. Bradbury Science Museum. bsm.lanl.gov. Los Alamos, New Mexico. Brazos Valley Museum of Natural History. brazosvalleymuseum.org. Bryan, Texas. Brazosport Museum of Natural Science. bmns.org. Clute, Texas. Briarbush Nature Center. briarbush.org. Abington, Pennsylvania. Bruce Museum of Arts and Science. brucemuseum.org. Greenwich, Connecticut. Bruckner Nature Center. brucknernaturcenter.com. Troy, Ohio. Bueller Planetarium and Observatory. iloveplanets.com. Davie, Florida. Buffalo Museum of Science. sciencebuff.org. Buffalo, New York. Kman. Golisano Children's Museum of Naples. Kman.org. Naples, Florida. Caddo Indian Territory Muse. Endlib. IndianTerritoryInc.com. Caddo, Oklahoma. Cade Museum for Creativity and Invention. cademuseum.org. Gainesville, Florida. Caltech Big Bear Solar Observatory. bbso.njit.edu. Big Bear City, California. California Agriculture Museum. californiaagmuseum.org. Woodland, California. California Center for Wildlife. San Rafael, California. California Oil Museum. oilmuseum.net. Santa Paula, California. California Science Center. casciencetr.org. Los Angeles, California. California Trail Interpretive Center. CaliforniaTrailCenter.org. Elko, Nevada. Call Air Museum. strvlees.lincolncounty.wy.org/museums_call_air.hdm. Afton, Wyoming. Colusa Nature Center and Planetarium. ColusaNature.org. Fort Myers, Florida. Cambridge Glass Museum. cambridgeglass.org/museum.php. Cambridge, Ohio. Camera Heritage Museum. CameraHeritageMuseum.com. Stanton, Virginia. Cannonball House Museum. Cannonballhouse.org. Macon, Georgia. Cantigny Gardens and Museums. Cantigny.org. Wheaton, Illinois. Cape Cod Children's Museum. CapeCodChildren'sMuseum.org. Mashpee, Massachusetts. Cape Fear Museum. CapeFearMuseum.com. Wilmington, North Carolina. Cape Henry Lighthouse. PreservationVirginia.org/visit/historic-properties/Cape-Henry-Lighthouse. Virginia Beach, Virginia. Carnegie Museum of Montgomery County. cdpl.lib.in.us/Carnegie. Crawfordsville, Indiana. Carnegie Museum of Natural History. CarnegieMNH.org. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Carnegie Science Center. The Carnegie Science Center.org. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Carolyn Parr Nature Museum. Napa, California. Carpinteria State Beach Visitor Center. parks.ca.gov/question-page_ID=59. Carpinteria, California. Catawba Science Center. Hickory, North Carolina. Cattle Raisers Museum. CattlerRacersMuseum.org. Fort Worth, Texas. Celery Flats Historical Area, City of Portage Parks and Rec. Department. kalamazoo.com/celery.hdm. Portage, Michigan. Center for Agricultural Science and Heritage. centerforag.com. Indianapolis, Indiana. Center for Creative Photography. creativephotography.org. Tucson, Arizona. Center in the Square. centerinthesquare.org. Roanoke, Virginia. Central Florida Zoo and Botanical Gardens. centralfloridazoo.org. Sanford, Florida. Central Washington Agricultural Museum. centralwagmuseum.org. Union Gap, Washington. Cernan Earth and Space Center. triton.cc.il.us/cernan/cernan_home.html. River Grove, Illinois. Shabu Space and Science Center. shabuspace.org. Oakland, California. Chapman's Gem and Mineral Museum. Fortuna, California. Charles Bruce Davis Museum of Art, History and Science, Inc. Yadkinville, North Carolina. Chattahoochee Nature Center. chattanoogaCenter.org. Roswell, Georgia. Chesapeake Children's Museum. theCCM.org. Annapolis, Maryland. Chesapeake Heritage Conservancy, Inc. chesapeakeheritage.org. Havre de Grace, Maryland. Chesapeake Planetarium. eclipse.cps.k12.va.us/departments/planetarium/index.html. Chesapeake, Virginia. Chicago Botanic Gardens. chicagobotanic.org. Glencoe, Illinois. Children's Galleries for Jewish Culture. New York, New York. Children's Museum. The Children's Museum.ct.org. West Hartford, Connecticut. Children's Museum at La Habra. lhcm.org. La Habra, California. Children's Museum in Easton. Children's Museum in Easton.org. Easton, Massachusetts. Children's Museum of Fond du Lac. cmfdl.org. Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. Children's Museum of New Hampshire. childrens-museum.org. Dover, New Hampshire. Children's Museum of Richmond. c-mor.org. Richmond, Virginia. Children's Science Explorarium at Sugar Sand Park. scienceexplorarium.org. Boca Raton, Florida. Chippewa Falls Museum of Industry and Technology. cfmit.org. Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. Chipokes Farm and Forestry Museum. dcr.virginia.gov/state_parks/chf.shtml. Surrey, Virginia. Cincinnati Observatory Center. cincinnatiobservatory.org. Cincinnati, Ohio. Clark Planetarium. clarkplanetarium.org. Salt Lake City, Utah. Clearwater Marine Aquarium. seawinter.com. Clearwater, Florida. Cliffs of the New State Park. Seven Springs, North Carolina. Cloud County Historical Society Museum. cloudcountymuseum.org. Concordia, Kansas. Cobb Institute of Archaeology Museum. cobb.msstate.edu/museum.html. Mississippi State, Mississippi. Coca-Cola Space Science Center. ccssc.org. Columbus, Georgia. Colburn Gem and Mineral Museum. colburnmuseum.org. Asheville, North Carolina. Cold War Air Museum. coldwarairmuseum.org. Lancaster, Texas. Colorado School of Mines, Geology Museum. mines.edu/geology_museum. Golden, Colorado. Columbia River Exhibit of History, Science and Technology. crehsd.org. Richland, Washington. Computer History Museum. computerhistory.org. Mountain View, California. Conner Prairie. connerprairie.org. Fishers, Indiana. Conservancy of Southwest Florida, Naples Nature Center. conservancy.org. Naples, Florida. Cook's Natural Science Museum. Decatur, Alabama. Cool Spring Power Museum. coolspringpowermuseum.org. Cool Spring, Pennsylvania. Core Sound Waterfowl Museum and Heritage Center. coresound.com. Harkes Island, North Carolina. Corning Museum of Glass. cmog.org. Corning, New York. Cox Science Center and Aquarium. coxsciencecenter.org. West Palm Beach, Florida. Craftsmanship Museum. craftsmanshipmuseum.com. Carlsbad, California. Cranbrook Institute of Science. science.cranbrook.edu. Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. Creation and Earth History Museum. creationsd.org. Santee, California. Creation Evidences Museum. creationevidence.org. Glen Rose, Texas. Crispin Antiquarian Foundation. crispinsdrugstoremuseum.com. Lincoln, Kansas. Crispin's Drug Store Museum. crispinsdrugstoremuseum.com. Lincoln, Kansas. Crowder's Mountain State Park. Kings Mountain, North Carolina. Crowley Museum and Nature Center. crowleyfl.org. Sarasota, Florida. Cumberland Science Museum. adventuresci.com. Nashville, Tennessee. Sylvan Arboretum Association. sylvanassociation.org. Baltimore, Maryland. D. Ralph Hostetter Museum of Natural History. emu.edu/science center/museum. Harrisonburg, Virginia. Dallas Public Schools Environmental Education Center. Seagoville, Texas. Daniel Stowe Botanical Garden. dsbg.org. Belmont, North Carolina. Danville Science Center. dsc.smv.org. Danville, Virginia. Delaware Children's Museum. delawarechildrensmuseum.org. Wilmington, Delaware. Delaware County Institute of Science. delcohistory.org/dcis. Media, Pennsylvania. Delta College Clever Planetarium and Earth Science Center. Stockton, California. Denver Museum of Nature and Science. dmns.org. Denver, Colorado. Dinosaur Discovery Museum. dinosaurdiscoverymuseum.org. Kenosha, Wisconsin. Discovery Center. mydiscoverycenter.org. Ocala, Florida. Discovery Center of Springfield. discoverycenter.org. Springfield, Missouri. Discovery Museum Education Facility. Sacramento, California. Discovery Museum and Planetarium. discoverymuseum.org. Bridgeport, Connecticut. Discovery Place, Inc. discoveryplace.org. Charlotte, North Carolina. Discovery Science Place. discoveryscienceplace.org. Tyler, Texas. Discovery Times Square. discoverytsx.com. New York, New York. Discovery World. discoveryworld.org. Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Dittrich Medical History Center. case.edu/artsci/dittrich/museum. Cleveland, Ohio. Don Harrington Discovery Center. dhdc.org. Amarillo, Texas. Dawson Great Lakes Museum. DetroitHistorical.org. Detroit, Michigan. Dudley Herbarium and California Academy of Sciences Herbarium. research.calacademy.org/botany. San Francisco, California. EAA AirVenture Museum. airventuremuseum.org. Oshkosh, Wisconsin. Etsu and GSB Natural History Museum and Gray Fossil Site. grayfossilmuseum.com. Gray, Tennessee. Earth Science Learning Center/Stories in Stones. storiesinstones.com. Angels Camp, California. East Texas Oil Museum. easttexasoilmuseum.com. Kilgore, Texas. Eastern New Mexico University Natural History Museum. enmu.edu/services/museum/natural-history. Portales, New Mexico. Ecotarium. ecotarium.org. Worcester, Massachusetts. Edison and Ford Winter Estates. href = Edison FORDWINT ERIEstates.org. Fort Myers, Florida. Edith J. Carrier Arboretum and Botanical Gardens at James Madison University. jmu.edu/arboretum. Harrisonburg, Virginia. El Paso Explorium. elpasoexplorium.org. El Paso, Texas. El Paso Science Museum. insightselpaso.org. El Paso, Texas. Elachi Nature Science Center. elachi.org. Gainesville, Georgia. Eli Whitney Museum. eliwhitney.org. Hamden, Connecticut. Elkhorn Slough Estuary Rhine Reserve. elkhornslock.org. Watsonville, California. Elsing Museum. elsing.oru.edu. Tulsa, Oklahoma. Emerald Coast Science Center. ecscience.org. Fort Walton Beach, Florida. Empire State Aerosciences Museum. esam.org. Glenville, New York. Ensor Park and Museum. ensorparkandmuseum.org. Olathe, Kansas. Entomology Research Museum. entmuseum.ucr.edu. Riverside, California. Essig Museum of Entomology. Berkeley, California. Evansville Museum of Arts, History, and Science. emuseum.org. Evansville, Indiana. Explora Science Center and Children's Museum. explora.mus.nm.us. Albuquerque, New Mexico. Exploration Works Montana's Interactive Science Center. explorationworks.org. Helena, Montana. Exploratorium. exploratorium.edu. San Francisco, California. Explored Science Center. dcn.davis.ca.us/geo/explorit. Davis, California. FA Fishing Hall of Fame and Museum. igfa.org. Dania Beach, Florida. Fairbury City Museum. fairbury.com/pages/history/city_museum.html. Fairbury, Nebraska. Falls Cape State Park. Virginia Beach, Virginia. Family Interactive Gallery, FIG, at Whatcom Museum. whatcommuseum.org. Bellingham, Washington. Farley Nuclear Plant Visitors Center. southerncompany.com/about-us/southern-nuclear/farley.cshtml. Columbia, Alabama. Farm and Ranch Museum. farmandranchmuseum.com. Gering, Nebraska. Farmers Museum. farmersmuseum.org. Cooperstown, New York. Feather River Hatchery. Oroville, California. Feather River Nature Center and Native Plant Park. cityoforoville.org. Oroville, California. Feet First Exhibit, Rosalind Franklin University of Medicine and Science. rosalindfranklin.edu/dnn/shoal/home/shoalcollegiofpodiatric medicine/feetfirst.aspx. North Chicago, Illinois. First Landing State Park and Chesapeake Bay Center. Virginia Beach, Virginia. Flag Township Historical Society and Museum. flagtownshipmuseum.org. Rochelle, Illinois. Flandrau Science Center. flandrau.org. Tucson, Arizona. Florida Agricultural Museum. floridaagmuseum.org. Palm Coast, Florida. Florida International Museum. floridamuseum.org. St. Petersburg, Florida. Florida Museum of Natural History Administration/Collections/Research. floridamuseum.ufl.edu. Gainesville, Florida. Florida Museum of Natural History Exhibits and Public Programs. floridamuseum.ufl.edu. Gainesville, Florida. Florida Solar Energy Center, University of Central Florida. fscc.ucf.edu. Cocoa, Florida. Flying Heritage Collection. flyingheritage.com. Everett, Washington. Fontana, California. Fontana, California. Fort Huachuca Army Intelligence Museum. huachucamuseum.com. Fort Huachuca, Arizona. Fort Lauderdale Fire and Safety Museum. fortlauderdalefiremuseum.com. Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Fort Roosevelt Science Center. Hanford, California. Fort Wayne Firefighters Museum, Inc. fortwaynefiremuseum.com. Fort Wayne, Indiana. Fort Worth Aviation Museum. fortworthaviationmuseum.com. Fort Worth, Texas. Fort Worth Museum of Science and History. fortworthmuseum.org. Fort Worth, Texas. Fossil Discovery Center of Madera County. maderamammoths.org. Chowchilla, California. Fountain of Youth Archaeological Park. fountainofyouthflorida.com. St. Augustine, Florida. Franklin Institute Science Museum. www.fi.edu. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Fresno Chaffee Zoo. chaffeezoo.org. Fresno, California. Frisco Native American Museum and Natural History Center. nativeamericanmuseum.org. Frisco, North Carolina. Frost Science. frostscience.org. Miami, Florida. Funk Prairie Home and Rock Museum. funkprairiehomemuseum.com. Shirley, Illinois. GWIZ, closed. Sarasota, Florida. Gaithersburg Community Museum. gaithersburgmd.gov/about-us/city-facilities/Gaithersburg-community-museum. Gaithersburg, Maryland. Garfield County Museum. Jordan, Montana. Gateway to Science. gatewaytoscience.org. Bismarck, North Dakota. GOL-LUTHY-MEM. Botanical Garden. Peoria, Illinois. George C. Page Museum of La Brea Discoveries. tarpits.org. Los Angeles, California. George Washington Carver National Monument. nps.gov/gwcs/index.htm. Diamond, Missouri. George Westinghouse Museum. Wilmerding, Pennsylvania. Georgia Museum of Agriculture and Historic Village. abac.edu/museum. Tifton, Georgia. Gary Dunlap Rose Garden/Botanical Garden. pacific.edu/about-pacific/sustainability/pacific-garden-program/the-gardens.html. Stockton, California. Gianteth Ship Corp. giantethship.com. Pendleton, Indiana. Gillespie Museum, Stetson University. gillespiemuseum.stetson.edu. DeLand, Florida. Glazer Children's Museum. glazermuseum.org. Tampa, Florida. Glen L. Martin Maryland Aviation Museum. mdaremuseum.org. Middle River, Maryland. Gosport History Museum. gosport.info/organizations/voluntary_groups/friends_of_gosport_museum/friends_gosport_museum.html. Gosport, Indiana. Grand Cavern Regional Park. Grottos, Virginia. Granville County Historical Society Museum. granvillemusumnc.org. Oxford, North Carolina. Gray Lodge Bird Museum. Gridley, California. Great Expectations Children's Museum. gbchildrensmuseum.org. Green Bay, Wisconsin. Great Falls Park. Saline, Virginia. Great Lakes Science Center. greatscience.com. Cleveland, Ohio. Great Saltpetre Cave Preserve. caves.org/conservancy/GSP. Mt. Vernon, Kentucky. Great Valley Serpentarium. snakemuseum.com. Lodi, California. Greater St. Louis Air and Space Museum. aerondspacemuseum.org/index. Cahokia, Illinois. Greater Shenandoah Historical Society Museum. greatershenandoahs.org. Shenandoah, Iowa. Green Spring Gardens Park. fairfaxcounty.gov/parks/gsgp. Alexandria, Virginia. Grout Museum of History and Science. groutmuseumdistrict.org. Waterloo, Iowa. Gulf Branch Nature Center. Arlington, Virginia. Gulf Coast Explorium and IMAX Theater. Explorium.net. Mobile, Alabama. Gulf Islands National Seashore. nps.gov/GUIs. Gulf Breeze, Florida. Gulf of the Farallones Marine Sanctuary. farallones.noaa.gov. San Francisco, California. Gustafson Gallery. avenir.colorado.state.edu/Gustafson-gallery.aspx. Fort Collins, Colorado. H.B. Robinson Visitors Center. Hartsville, South Carolina. Heritage Park. mcfta.org/exhibitions mchs.html. Midland, Michigan. Habito Children's Museum. habitot.org. Berkeley, California. Hall of Flame Fire Museum. helloflame.org. Phoenix, Arizona. Hall of Health. hellofhealth.org. Berkeley, California. Halleckville Museum Farm. halleckville.com. Riverhead, New York. Hampton Historical Society Fire Museum. hamptonhistoricalsociety.org/fire.htm. Hampton, New Hampshire. Hands-on Children's Museum. hawkem.org. Olympia, Washington. Happy Hollow Park and Zoo. hhpz.org. San Jose, California. Harbor Wildlife Museum. harborwildlifemuseum.com. Sherman, Texas. Harbor Branch Ocean Discovery Center at Fa Harbor Branch. hboi.edu. Fort Pierce, Florida. Harry P. Leu Gardens. leugardens.org. Orlando, Florida. Harvard Museum of Natural History. hmnh.harvard.edu. Cambridge, Massachusetts. Hatfield Marine Science Center. hmsc.oregonstate.edu. Newport, Oregon. Health Adventure, thehealthadventure.org. Asheville, North Carolina. Health Focus of Southwest Virginia. louisgallup.org. Salem, Virginia. Heard Natural Science Museum and Wildlife Sanctuary. heardmuseum.org. McKinney, Texas. Helix Community Science Center. Los Altos, California. Heritage Winooski Mill Museum. personalweb.smcvt.edu/winooskimills/heritagewinooski.htm. Colchester, Vermont. Hicksville Gregory Museum. Hicksville, New York. Hieronymus Mueller Museum. muellermuseum.org/find-us.php. Decatur, Illinois. Highlands Nature Center. wcu.edu/hbs/naturiCenter.htm. Highlands, North Carolina. Hill Aerospace Museum. aerospaceutah.org. Hill AFB, Utah. Historic Speedwell. speedwell.org. Morristown, New Jersey. Historic Virginia Key Beach Park and Museum. virginiakeybeachpark.net. Miami, Florida. Historical Military Armor Museum, Division of McLean Museum. Anderson, Indiana. History Colorado Center. historycolorado.org. Denver, Colorado. History of Science Collections. Norman, Oklahoma. Houston Maritime Museum. houstonmaritimemuseum.org. Houston, Texas. Houston Museum of Natural Science, HMNS. hmns.org. Houston, Texas. Howard B. Owens Science Center. www.1.pgcps.org/howardbowens. Langham Seabrook, Maryland. Hudson Highlands Nature Museum. hhnaturemuseum.org. Cornwall, New York. Hudson Meng Bison Kill Site and Museum. en.wikipedia.org/wiki/hudson-meng_bison_kill. Crawford, Nebraska. IMAG History and Science Center. thymag.org. Fort Myers, Florida. Idaho Museum of Natural History. imnh.isu.edu. Pocatello, Idaho. Illinois State Library. Springfield, Illinois. Imagination Station Children's Museum. ImagineAugusta.org. Augusta, Georgia. Imagination Station/Science Museums of Wilson, Inc. ImagineScience.org. Wilson, North Carolina. Imagine It, Inc. Ceres, California. Imperial Valley Desert Museum. ForDesertMuseum.org. Ocotillo, California. Impression 5 Science Center. IMPRESSION5.org. Lansing, Michigan. Indiana Medical History Museum. IMHM.org. Indianapolis, Indiana. Indiana State Museum. IndianaMuseum.org. Indianapolis, Indiana. InfoCenter Alabama, Inc. InfoCenterAlabama.com. Helena, Alabama. Institute for the Study of the Ancient World. nyu.edu/isaw. New York, New York. International Cryptozoology Museum. Cryptozoologymuseum.com. Portland, Maine. International Museum of Art and Science. imasonline.org. McAllen, Texas. International Museum of Surgical Science. imss.org. Chicago, Illinois. International Vacuum Tube Museum. themuseums.org. Greenwood Village, Colorado. International Wildlife Museum. thewildlifemuseum.org. Tucson, Arizona. Interurban Railway Station Depot/the Plano Conservancy for Historic Preservation, Inc. Plano, Texas. Invention Factory Science Center. InventionFactory.com. Trenton, New Jersey. IRAG Ross/Niagara Aerospace Museum. WNYAerospace.org. Niagara Falls, New York. Iredell Museums, Inc. IredellMuseums.org. Statesville, North Carolina. Ironstone Heritage Museum. IronstoneVineyards.com. Murphys, California. J.C. Ralston Arboretum at NC State University. ncsu.edu/J.C. Ralston Arboretum. Raleigh, North Carolina. Jefferson Barracks Telephone Museum. jbtlmuseum.org. St. Louis, Missouri. Jefferson Planetarium, Richmond Public Schools. Richmond, Virginia. Jerome Buddy Ford Nature Center. AlexandriaVA.gov/recreation. Alexandria, Virginia. John D. MacArthur Beach State Park. FloridaStateParks.org/MacArthur Beach/default.cfm. North Palm Beach, Florida. John Gorey State Museum. FloridaStateParks.org/John Gorey Museum/default.cfm. Apalachicola, Florida. Joseph Moore Museum of Natural History. Earlham.edu/JMM. Richmond, Indiana. Junior Center of Art and Science. JuniorCenter.org. Oakland, California. Juricasoke Nature Museum. ben.edu/museum. Lisle, Illinois. Kalamazoo Valley Museum. KalamazooMuseum.org. Kalamazoo, Michigan. Kalmar-Nickel Found and Shipyard. Kalmarnickel.org. Wilmington, Delaware. Canapaha Botanical Gardens. Canapaha.org. Gainesville, Florida. Kansas Barbed Wire Museum. rushcounty.org/Barbed Wire Museum. La Crosse, Kansas. Kenosha Public Museum. museums.kenosha.org/public. Kenosha, Wisconsin. Kentucky Derby Museum. derbymuseum.org. Louisville, Kentucky. Kern Valley Museum. kernvalleymuseum.org. Kernville, California. Keystone Tractor Works Museum. KeystoneTractorWorks.com. Colonial Heights, Virginia. Klamath Basin National Wildlife Refuge Visitor Center. Two Lake, California. Clem Arboretum and Botanic Garden. Clem.org. Rockford, Illinois. L.C. Bates Museum. gwh.org/lkbots. Hinckley, Maine. LAB. Enterprise. Albany, Georgia. LSU Museum of Natural Science. appl003.lsu.edu/natsci/lmns.nsf/index. Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Lafayette Science Museum. LafayetteScienceMuseum.org. Lafayette, Louisiana. Lake Afton Public Observatory. Wichita.edu/LAPO. Goddard, Kansas. Lake Champlain Science Center. echovermont.org. Burlington, Vermont. Lake Erie Nature and Science Center. lenc.org. Bay Village, Ohio. Lake Jackson Historical Museum. lakejacksonmuseum.org. Lake Jackson, Texas. Lake Meredith Aquatic and Wildlife Museum. myspace.com/lmawm. Fritch, Texas. Lake Shore Railway Historical Society. grape-track.org. Northeast, Pennsylvania. Lakeview Museum of Arts and Sciences. lakeview-museum.org. Peoria, Illinois. Last Chance Mining Museum. gastineauchannel.blogspot.com/2008/09/last-chance-mining-museum.html. Juneau, Alaska. Lava Beds National Monument. npca.org/parks. Two Lake, California. Lawrence Hall of Science. lawrencehalloffscience.org. Berkeley, California. Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory Visitor Center. href = llnl.gov/about/visiting.html. Livermore, California. Ledyard Water-Powered Sawmill. sites.google.com/site/Ledyard Sawmill. Ledyard, Connecticut. Liberty Science Center. lsc.org. Jersey City, New Jersey. Lick Observatory. San Jose, California. Lied Discovery Children's Museum. ldcm.org. Las Vegas, Nevada. Life Science Museum. Muncie, Indiana. Lincoln Children's Museum. lincolnchildrensmuseum.org. Lincoln, Nebraska. Lodi Lake Discovery Center. lodi.gov. Lodi, California. Loggerhead Marine Life Center. marinelife.org. Juno Beach, Florida. Long Branch Nature Center. arlingtonva.us. Arlington, Virginia. Longmont Museum. Longmont, Colorado. Los Angeles Children's Museum. childrensmusumla.org. Los Angeles, California. Lotusland Foundation. lotusland.org. Santa Barbara, California. Lowell D. Holmes Museum of Anthropology. holmes.anthropology.museum. Wichita, Kansas. Luray Valley Museum. luraycaverns.com. Luray, Virginia. Luthi Botanical Garden. Links Exhibits. linksexhibits.com. El Paso, Texas. Mel Fisher Maritime Heritage Society and Museum. mlfisher.org. Key West, Florida. MOSI, Museum of Science and Industry. mosi.org. Tampa, Florida. MOXI, the Wolf Museum of Exploration and Innovation. moxi.org. Santa Barbara, California. MRB Lewis and Clark Center. mrb-lewisandclarkcenter.org. Nebraska City, Nebraska. Mackenzie Environmental Education Center. dnr.wi.gov/education/Mackenzie. Poynette, Wisconsin. Macaulay Museum of Dental History and Waring Historical Library. waring.library.musk.edu. Charleston, South Carolina. Maggie L. Walker National Historic Site. nps.gov/ma/index.hdm. Richmond, Virginia. Maine Historical Society and Museum. mainehistory.org. Portland, Maine. Malibu Lagoon Museum and Historic Adamson House. adamsonhouse.org. Malibu, California. Mammoth Site of Hot Springs. mammothsite.com. Hot Springs, South Dakota. Mammoth Site of Hot Springs. mammothsite.com. Hot Springs, South Dakota. Marble Museum. en.wikipedia.org/wiki/Nelson, Georgia. Nelson, Georgia. Marble Museum. en.wikipedia.org/wiki/Nelson, Georgia. Nelson, Georgia. Marchfield Air Museum. marchfield.org. Riverside, California. Marchfield Air Museum. marchfield.org. Riverside, California. Marie Selby Botanical Gardens Downtown Sarasota Campus. selby.org. Sarasota, Florida. Marie Selby Botanical Gardens Downtown Sarasota Campus. selby.org. Sarasota, Florida. Marine Science Education Center. marinesciencecenter.com. Mayport, Florida. Marine Science Education Center. marinesciencecenter.com. Mayport, Florida. Marine Science Institute. Redwood City, California. Marine Science Institute. Redwood City, California. Marine Science Station. citrus.k12.fl.us/mss. Crystal River, Florida. Marine Science Station. citrus.k12.fl.us/mss. Crystal River, Florida. Marshall Historical Society. marshallhistoricalsociety.org. Marshall, Michigan. Marshall Historical Society. marshallhistoricalsociety.org. Marshall, Michigan. Mary Vagel Nature Center. fontana.org/index.aspx?nid=1. Mary Vagel Nature Center. fontana.org/index.aspx?nid=1. Maryland Science Center. mdsci.org. Baltimore, Maryland. Maryland Science Center. mdsci.org. Baltimore, Maryland. Mashantucket Pequot Museum and Research Center. pequotmuseum.org. Mashantucket, Connecticut. Mashantucket Pequot Museum and Research Center. pequotmuseum.org. Mashantucket, Connecticut. Matchless Mine Museum, Leadville Assembly, Inc. matchlessmine.com. Leadville, Colorado. Matchless Mine Museum, Leadville Assembly, Inc. matchlessmine.com. Leadville, Colorado. Mathematics and Science Center FNDN. Richmond, Virginia. Mathematics and Science Center FNDN. Richmond, Virginia. Matthews Living History Farm Museum. matthewsfarmmuseum.org. Galax, Virginia. Matthews Living History Farm Museum. matthewsfarmmuseum.org. Galax, Virginia. Mayborn Museum Complex, Baylor University. maybornmuseum.com. Waco, Texas. Mayborn Museum Complex, Baylor University. maybornmuseum.com. Waco, Texas. Maymont. Maymont.org. Richmond, Virginia. Maymont. Maymont.org. Richmond, Virginia. McAuliffe Shepherd Discovery Center. Starhop.com. Concord, New Hampshire. McAuliffe Shepherd Discovery Center. Starhop.com. Concord, New Hampshire. McCormick Observatory. Charlottesville, Virginia. McCormick Observatory. Charlottesville, Virginia. McKenna Children's Museum. McKennaKids.org. New Braunfels, Texas. McKenna Children's Museum. McKennaKids.org. New Braunfels, Texas. McWane Science Center. McWane.org. Birmingham, Alabama. Michigan Science Center. mi-sci.org. Detroit, Michigan. Midland Center for the Arts. mcfta.org. Midland, Michigan. Mighty 8th Air Force Museum. mighty8th.org. Pooler, Georgia. Miles Mineral Museum. w3a.enmu.edu/services/museum/miles-mineral. Portales, New Mexico. Mill Mountain Zoological Park. mmzoo.org. Roanoke, Virginia. Milwaukee County Zoo. milwaukeezoo.org. Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Miniature World of Trains. miniatureworldoftrains.com. Greenville, South Carolina. Minnesota Historical Society. mnhs.org. St. Paul, Minnesota. Minnesota Veterinary Medicine Museum. mvma.org/historical_museum.asp. St. Paul, Minnesota. Minnetrista Cultural Center and Oakhurst Gardens. mccoke.org. Muncie, Indiana. Minot State University, Division of Science. minotstatu.edu. Minot, North Dakota. Mississippi Coast Model Railroad Museum. mcmrcm.org. Gulfport, Mississippi. Mississippi Museum of Natural Science. msnaturalscience.org. Jackson, Mississippi. Mobile Area Museum Association. mobileareamuseums.org. Mobile, Alabama. Moccasin Lake Nature Park. clearwater-fl.com. Clearwater, Florida. Mono Lake Committee. manolak.org. Lee Vining, California. Monterey Bay Aquarium. mbayaq.org. Monterey, California. Montshire Museum of Science. montshire.org. Norwich, Vermont. Moody Gardens. moodygardens.org. Galveston, Texas. Moorhead Planetarium. moorheadplanetarium.org. Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Morris Arboretum. business-services-services.upenn.edu/arboretum/index.html. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Morrow Mountain State Park. ncparks.gov/visit/parks/momo/main.php. Albemarle, North Carolina. Mount Cuba Astronomical Observatory. Wilmington, Delaware. Mount Mitchell State Park. Burnsville, North Carolina. Mount Shasta Volcanic Exhibit. Mount Shasta, California. Mount Washington Observatory. mountwashington.org. North Conway, New Hampshire. Mount Wilson Institute. mtwilson.edu. Pasadena, California. Mountain Lake Biological Station. mlbs.org. Charlottesville, Virginia. Mountain Skies Astronomy Science Center. mountain-skies.org. Lake Arrowhead, California. Mountain Town Wildlife Museum. Oak Glen, California. Mt. Shasta Sisson Museum. mtshastamuseum.com. Mount Shasta, California. Museum of Anthropology. anthrop.missouri.edu. Columbia, Missouri. Museum of Arts and Sciences. mossmacon.com. Macon, Georgia. Museum of Culpeper History. culpepermuseum.com. Culpeper, Virginia. Museum of Discovery. museumofdiscovery.org. Little Rock, Arkansas. Museum of Discovery and Science. mods.org. Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Museum of Flight. museumofflight.org. Seattle, Washington. Museum of Geology. Macomb, Illinois. Museum of Glass. museumofglass.org. Tacoma, Washington. Museum of Jurassic Technology. mjt.org. Culver City, California. Museum of Long Island Natural Sciences. smli.org. Stony Brook, New York. Museum of Man in the Sea. maininthesea.org. Panama City Beach, Florida. Museum of Natural History. uiowa.edu/nathist. Iowa City, Iowa. Museum of Natural Science. weberci.org/index.php?id=. Museum of Osteopathic Medicine and International Center for Osteopathic History. atsu.edu/museum. Kirksville, Missouri. Museum of Paleontology. Berkeley, California. Museum of Radio and Technology. mrtwv.org. Huntington, West Virginia. Museum of Science. mos.org. Boston, Massachusetts. Museum of Science and History. themosh.org. Jacksonville, Florida. Museum of Science and Industry. msichicago.org. Chicago, Illinois. Museum of Science and Technology. most.org. Syracuse, New York. Museum of South Texas History. mosthistory.org. Edinburgh, Texas. Museum of the American Numismatic Association. money.org/am/template.cfm $?home. Colorado Springs, Colorado. Museum of 20th Century Warfare. m20cwinfo.org. Indianapolis, Indiana. NC. Botanical Garden. ncbg.unc.edu. Chapel Hill, North Carolina. NASA Dryden Flight Research Facility Museum. Edwards Air Force Base, California. NASA/Goddard Visitor Center and Museum. Greenbelt, Maryland. NEU Anthropology Museum. niu.edu/anthro_museum. DeKalb, Illinois. NM Wing, Confederate Air Force Museum. Hobbs, New Mexico. NICE Science and Tech Museum Consortium. Corona Park, New York. National Air and Space Museum. nasm.si.edu. Washington, District of Columbia. National Aquarium. aqua.org/visit/dc. Washington, District of Columbia. National Balloon Museum and U.S. Ballooning Hall of Fame. nationalballoonmuseum.com. Indianola, Iowa. National Center for Children's Illustrated Literature. nccil.org. Abilene, Texas. National Children's Museum. ccm.org. National Harbor, Maryland. National Cryptologic Museum Foundation. cryptologicfoundation.org. Fort George G. Meade, Maryland. National Electronics Museum. nationalelectronicsmuseum.org. Linthicum, Maryland. National Hispanic Cultural Center. nationalhispaniccenter.org. Albuquerque, New Mexico. National Infantry Museum. nationalinfantrymuseum.com. Fort Benning, Georgia. National Liberty Museum. libertymuseum.org. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. National Mining Hall of Fame and Museum. leadville.com/mining museum. Leadville, Colorado. National Museum of African American History and Culture. washington.org/smithsonian-institution-museums. Washington, District of Columbia. National Museum of American History. americanhistory.si.edu/index.cfm. Washington, District of Columbia. National Museum of Crime and Punishment. crimemuseum.org. Washington, District of Columbia. National Museum of Health and Medicine. medicalmuseum.mil. Silver Spring, Maryland. National Museum of Nuclear Science and History NID 2853. nuclearmuseum.org. Albuquerque, New Mexico. National Museum of Surveying. surveyingmuseum.org. Springfield, Illinois. National Museum of Wildlife Art. wildlifeart.org. Jackson, Wyoming. National Museum of the United States Air Force. nationalmuseum.af.mil. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Ohio. National Museum of the United States Navy. history.navy.mil/branches/org8-1.hdm. Washington, District of Columbia. National Radio Astronomy Observatory. Green Bank, West Virginia. National Soaring Museum. soaringmuseum.org. Elmira, New York. National Wild Turkey Federation. nwtf.org. Edgefield, South Carolina. Natural Bridge Zoo. naturalbridgezoo.com. Natural Bridge, Virginia. Natural History Museum of Utah. nhmu.utah.edu. Salt Lake City, Utah. Natural History Society of Maryland. marylandnature.org. Baltimore, Maryland. Natural Science Center of Greensboro, Inc. natci.org. Greensboro, North Carolina. Natural Tunnel State Park and Visitor Center. dcr.virginia.gov/state_parks. Duffield, Virginia. Nature Museum. naturemuseum.org. Chicago, Illinois. Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale Museum. nasflmuseum.com. Ft. Lauderdale, Florida. Naval Undersea Museum. history.navy.mil/museum/keyport/index1.hdm. Keyport, Washington. Nebraska Firefighters Museum and Education Center. nebraskafirefightersmuseum.com. Kearney, Nebraska. New Dungeness Lighthouse. newdungenesslighthouse.com. Sequim, Washington. New London Public Museum. newlondonwi.org/museum.hdm. New London, Wisconsin. New Mexico Museum of Space History. nmspacemuseum.org. Alamogordo, New Mexico. New York Hall of Science. nyhallsci.org. Corona, New York. Niagara Science Museum. niagarasciencemuseum.org. Niagara Falls, New York. Number 9 Washanti Mine and Museum. no9minemuseum.wixsite.com/museum. Lansford, Pennsylvania. Norfolk Botanical Garden. nbgs.org. Norfolk, Virginia. North Anna Visitors Center. Mineral, Virginia. North Carolina Aquarium at Fort Fisher. Coray Beach, North Carolina. North Carolina Aquarium at Pine Knoll Shores. ncaquariums.com. Atlantic Beach, North Carolina. North Carolina Aquarium on Roanoke Island. Manteo, North Carolina. North Carolina Museum of Life and Science. ncmls.org. Durham, North Carolina. North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. naturalsciences.org. Raleigh, North Carolina. North Wind Undersea Institute. museumregister.com/us/New York/Bronx/Northwind Undersea Institute/info.html. Bronx, New York. Northwest Arctic Heritage Center. nps.gov/cakr/parnews/nwahc.htm. Kotzebue, Alaska. Ocean Star Offshore Drilling Rig and Museum, Offshore Energy Center. oceanstaroec.com. Galveston, Texas. Odessa Meteor Crater and Museum. Odessa, Texas. Ogden, Utah. Ohio Camera Collectors Society. historiccamera.com/club/OCCS. Columbus, Ohio. Ohio Glass Museum. ohioglassmuseum.org. Lancaster, Ohio. Old Fort Jackson. chsgeorgia.org/home.cfm/page/oldfortjackson.htm. Savannah, Georgia. Omaha Children's Museum. ocm.org. Omaha, Nebraska. Optical Science Center and Museum. Hannibal, Missouri. Orange County Marine Institute. Dana Point, California. Oregon Museum of Science and Industry. Portland, Oregon. Orlando Science Center. osc.org. Orlando, Florida. Orma J. Smith Museum of Natural History. collegeofidaho.edu/cultural-hyphen-institutions/orma-j-smith-museum-natural-history. Caldwell, Idaho. Orpheum Children's Science Museum. orpheumkids.org. Champaign, Illinois. Owensboro Museum of Science and History. owensboromuseum.com. Owensboro, Kentucky. Pacific Aerospace Museum. pacificasixationmuseum.org. Honolulu, Hawaii. Pacific Battleship Center, Battleship USS Iowa. pacificbattleship.com. San Pedro, California. Pacific Energy and Resources Center. pge.com/pec. Sausalito, California. Pacific Science Center. paxci.org. Seattle, Washington. Pacific Tsunami Museum. tsunami.org/index.htm. Hilo, Hawaii. Padilla Bay National Estuarine Research Reserve. padillabay.gov. Mount Vernon, Washington. Palm Beach Zoo and Conservation Society. palmbeachzoo.org. West Palm Beach, Florida. Palomar Observatory. astro.caltech.edu/palomar. Palomar Mountain, California. Patricia Huffman Smith Remembering Columbia Museum. Patricia Huffman Smith ColumbiaMuseum.org. Hemp Hill, Texas. Peabody Essex Museum. pem.org. Salem, Massachusetts. Peabody Museum of Natural History. yale.edu/Peabody. New Haven, Connecticut. Peggy Notabert Nature Museum. naturemuseum.org. Chicago, Illinois. Pember Library and Museum. pembermuseum.com. Granville, New York. Pember Museum of Natural History. pembermuseum.com. Granville, New York. Pennsylvania National Fire Museum. pnfm.org. Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Permian Basin Petroleum Museum Library and Hall of Fame. petroleummuseum.org. Midland, Texas. Parrott Museum of Nature and Science. parrottmuseum.org. Dallas, Texas. Petrified Forest Museum. petrifiedforest.org. Calistoga, California. Phoenix Zoo. phoenixzoo.org. Phoenix, Arizona. Piedmont Environmental Center. piedmontenvironmental.com. High Point, North Carolina. Pinal Geology and Mineral Museum. pinalgeologymuseum.org. Coolidge, Arizona. Pink Palace Museum. memphismuseums.org. Memphis, Tennessee. Plains of Fame Air Museum. plainsoffame.org. Chino, California. Plains of Fame Air Museum, Arizona. plainsoffame.org. Valle Williams, Arizona. Plantation Agriculture Museum. arkansasstateparks.com/Plantation Agriculture Museum. Scott, Arkansas. Plantation Agriculture Museum State Park. arkansasstateparks.com/Plantation Agriculture Museum. Scott, Arkansas. Point Reyes Bird Observatory Visitor Center. Senate.gov. Stinson Beach, California. Port Townsend Marine Science Center. Olympus.net/PTMSC. Port Townsend, Washington. Portsmouth Museums Foundation. portsmouthmuseumsfoundation.org. Portsmouth, Virginia. Portsmouth Naval Shipyard Museum. portsmouthnavalshipyardmuseum.com. Portsmouth, Virginia. Poulsbo Marine Science Center. poulsbomsc.org. Poulsbo, Washington. Prehistoric Museum. museum.ceu.edu. Price, Utah. Pretlow Planetarium. odu.edu/planetarium. Norfolk, Virginia. Promised Land Zoo. pleaseoo.com. Eagle Rock, Missouri. Psychiatry, an Industry of Death Museum. cchr.org/museum. Los Angeles, California. Pueblo Zoo. pueblozoo.org. Pueblo, Colorado. Putnam Museum of History and Natural Science. putnam.org. Davenport, Iowa. Quail Ridge Wilderness Conservancy. Davis, California. R.A. Vines Environmental Science Center. Houston, Texas. Radford University Museum of the Earth Sciences. radford.edu/mes. Radford, Virginia. Radio and Television Museum. radiohistory.org. Bowie, Maryland. Railroad Museum. coloradorailroadmuseum.org. Golden, Colorado. Rangeley Lakes Logging Museum. rlrlm.org. Rangeley, Maine. Ravine State Gardens. floridastateparks.org/Ravine Gardens. Palatka, Florida. Raymond M. Alf Museum of Paleontology. alfmuseum.org. Claremont, California. Red Oak Nature Center. Fox Valley Park District.org. North Aurora, Illinois. Red River Valley Museum. rrvmuseum.org. Vernon, Texas. Redwood Discovery Museum. discovery-museum.org. Eureka, California. Reedville Fishermen's Museum. rfmuseum.org. Reedville, Virginia. Refuge Waterfowl Museum. Chincoteague, Virginia. Reuben H. Fleet Science Center. rhfleet.org. San Diego, California. Rhododendron Species Botanical Garden. rhodeygarden.org. Federal Way, Washington. River Legacy Living Science Center. riverlegacy.org. Arlington, Texas. Roberson Museum and Science Center. roberson.org. Binghamton, New York. Robeson County History Museum. robesoncountyhistory.com. Lumberton, North Carolina. Robeson Planetarium and Science Center. robesonsky.com. Lumberton, North Carolina. Rochester Hills Museum at Van Hoosen Farm. Rochester Hills, Michigan. Rochester Museum and Science Center. rmsc.org. Rochester, New York. Rock Hall Museum. rockhallmd.com/museum/index.php. Rock Hall, Maryland. Rocky Mount, North Carolina. Rocky Mountain Dinosaur Resource Center. rmdrc.com. Woodland Park, Colorado. Roebling Museum. roeblingmuseum.org. Roebling, New Jersey. Rogers Historical Museum. rogersar.gov/220/historical-museum. Rogers, Arkansas. Rookery Bay National Estuary Rhine Research Reserve. rookerybay.org. Naples, Florida. Roper Mountain Science Center. ropermountain.org. Greenville, South Carolina. Rosati Winery Museum. rosatiwinerymuseum.com. St. James, Missouri. Rothschild Peterson Patent Model Museum. patentmodel.org. Cazenovia, New York. Roundhouse Marine Studies Lab and Aquarium/Museum. roundhouseaquarium.org. Manhattan Beach, California. Rubenstein Museum of Science and Technology. most.org. Syracuse, New York. Rufus Porter Museum of Art and Ingenuity. rufusportermuseum.org. Brickton, Maine. Sea Science Center. see-scienceenter.org. Manchester, New Hampshire. Sea Science Center. see-scienceenter.org. Manchester, New Hampshire. Star Echo Station. echostation.org. Culver City, California. Sacramento Children's Museum. sacids.org. Rancho Cordova, California. Salk Institute. salk.edu. La Jolla, California. San Bernardino County Victor Valley Museum. sbcountymuseum.org. Apple Valley, California. San Diego Air and Space Museum. San Diego airspace.org. San Diego, California. San Diego Children's Discovery Museum. sdcdm.org. Escondido, California. San Francisco Bay Bird Observatory. sfbbo.org. Milpitas, California. San Francisco Bay National Wildlife Refuge. Newark, California. Santa Fe College Teaching Zoo. sfcollege.edu/zoo. Gainesville, Florida. Santa Monica Museum, Wonders of the World. Santa Monica, California. Santa Monica Pier Aquarium. healthybay.org/smpa/default.asp. Santa Monica, California. Sheila Museum of Natural History. sheilamuseum.org. Gastonia, North Carolina. Schifferstadt Architectural Museum. Frederick County Landmarks Foundation.org. Frederick, Maryland. SciQuest. sci-quest.org. Huntsville, Alabama. SciTech Center of Northern New York. scitechcenter.org. Watertown, New York. SciWorks. SciWorks.org. Winston-Salem, North Carolina. SciWorks. SciWorks.org. Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Science and Discovery Center of Northwest Florida. scienceanddiscoverycenter.org. Panama City, Florida. Science Center of Eastern Connecticut. fieldtrip.com/CT/344203991.htm. New London, Connecticut. Science Center of Pinellas County Inc. Science Center of Pinellas.org. St. Petersburg, Florida. Science Center of West Virginia. Bluefield, West Virginia. Science Center of West Virginia. Bluefield, West Virginia. Science Central. Fort Wayne, Indiana. Science Central. Fort Wayne, Indiana. Science Discovery Center of Oneonta. Oneonta.edu. Oneonta, New York. Science Discovery Center of Oneonta. Oneonta.edu. Oneonta, New York. Science Museum of Long Island. Plandome, New York. Science Museum of Long Island. Plandome, New York. Science Museum of Minnesota. smm.org. St. Paul, Minnesota. Science Museum of Minnesota. smm.org. St. Paul, Minnesota. Science Museum of Virginia. smv.org. Richmond, Virginia. Science Museum of Virginia. smv.org. Richmond, Virginia. Science Museum of Western Virginia. smwv.org. Roanoke, Virginia. Science Museum of Western Virginia. smwv.org. Roanoke, Virginia. Science Spectrum. sciencespectrum.com. Lubbock, Texas. Science Spectrum. sciencespectrum.com. Lubbock, Texas. Science Station. sciencestation.org. Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Science Station. sciencestation.org. Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Science Center. sciencecenter.org. Ithaca, New York. Science Center. sciencecenter.org. Ithaca, New York. Scotia Glenville Children's Museum. travelingmuseum.org. Scotia, New York. Scotia Glenville Children's Museum. travelingmuseum.org. Scotia, New York. Sea Center. sbnature.org/seacenter/index.php. Santa Barbara, California. Sea Center. sbnature.org/seacenter/index.php. Santa Barbara, California. Sea Glass Gallery and Museum. internationalzaglassmuseum.com. Fort Bragg, California. Sea Glass Gallery and Museum. internationalzaglassmuseum.com. Fort Bragg, California. Seacoast Science Center. seacoastsciencecenter.org. Rye, New Hampshire. Seacoast Science Center. seacoastsciencecenter.org. Rye, New Hampshire. Searchlight Museum. searchlighthistoricmuseum.org. Searchlight, Nevada. Searchlight Museum. searchlighthistoricmuseum.org. Searchlight, Nevada. Seminole County Public Schools Student Museum. scps.k12.fl.us. Sanford, Florida. Seminole County Public Schools Student Museum. scps.k12.fl.us. Sanford, Florida. Seven Eagles Earth Center. seven-eagles.com. Grand Rapids, Ohio. Seven Eagles Earth Center. seven-eagles.com. Grand Rapids, Ohio. Seymour Marine Discovery Center. Santa Cruz, California. Shenandoah Valley Discovery Museum. discoverymuseum.net. Winchester, Virginia. Sierra County Historical Society. sierracountyhistory.org. Sierra City, California. Silent Wings Museum. silentwingsmuseum.com. Lubbock, Texas. Smithsonian Marine Station at Fort Pierce. sms.si.edu/sme. Fort Pierce, Florida. Smokejumper Visitor Center. fs.fed.us/fire/people/smokejumpers/missoula/index.html. Missoula, Montana. South Carolina State Museum. South Carolina State Museum.org. Columbia, South Carolina. South Dakota State Agricultural Heritage Museum. sdstate.edu/ag museum. Brookings, South Dakota. South Shore Natural Science Center. ssnsc.org. Norwell, Massachusetts. South Texas Botanical Gardens and Nature Center. sdxbot.org. Corpus Christi, Texas. Southern Forest World. southernforestworld.org. Waycross, Georgia. Southern Vermont Natural History Museum. vermontmuseum.org. West Marlboro, Vermont. Spring River Zoo. roswell.nm.gov/static pages/index.php/pd1_zoo. Roswell, New Mexico. St. Louis Science Center. slsc.org. St. Louis, Missouri. Stanzel Model Aircraft Museum. stanzelmuseum.org. Schulenburg, Texas. State Museum of History. ok-history.mus.ok.us. Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Staten Island Museum. statenislandmuseum.org. Staten Island, New York. Steelworks Museum of Industry and Culture. steelworks.us. Pueblo, Colorado. Stepping Stones Museum for Children. steppingstonesmuseum.org. Norwalk, Connecticut. Sterling Hill Mine Tour and Museum. sterlinghillminingmuseum.org. Ogdensburg, New Jersey. Stephen F. Udvarhazy Center. arandspace.si.edu/museum/Udvarhazy. Chantilly, Virginia. Stockton Historical Maritime Museum. stocktonhistoricalmaritimemuseum.org. Stockton, California. Stout Paleontology Laboratory. Borrego Springs, California. Suffolk County Vanderbilt Museum. vanderbiltmuseum.org. Centerport, New York. Swan Ecosystem Center. swanecosystemcenter.org. Condon, Montana. Sweetwater County Historical Museum. sweetwatermuseum.org. Green River, Wyoming. Syracuse Wawasee Historical Museum, Inc. syracusemuseum.org. Syracuse, Indiana. System Source Computer Museum. museum.syssrc.com. Hunt Valley, Maryland. Taco Bell Discovery Science Center. discoverycube.org. Santa Ana, California. Taft Blackland Museum. blacklandmuseum.com. Taft, Texas. Talcott Mountain Science Center. Avon, Connecticut. Tallahassee Museum. tallahasseemuseum.org. Tallahassee, Florida. Tate Geological Museum, Casper College. caspercollege.edu/tate/index.html. Casper, Wyoming. Taylor Arboretum at Widener University. taylorarboretum.org. Wallingford, Pennsylvania. Telephone Museum of New Mexico. Albuquerque, New Mexico. Tellus, Northwest Georgia Science Museum. tellusmuseum.org. Cartersville, Georgia. Terre Haute Children's Museum. terrehautechildrensmuseum.com. Terre Haute, Indiana. Texarkana Museum System. texarkanamuseums.org. Texarkana, Texas. Texas Air Museum. texasairmuseum.org. San Antonio, Texas. Texas Discovery Gardens. texasdiscoverygardens.org. Dallas, Texas. Texas Energy Museum. texasenergymuseum.org/where2.asp. Beaumont, Texas. Texas Forestry Museum. treetexas.com. Lufkin, Texas. Texas Historical Commission. thc.state.tx.us. Austin, Texas. Texas Memorial Museum of Science and History. tmm.utexas.edu. Austin, Texas. Texas Pharmacy Museum. ttuhsc.edu/sop/museum. Amarillo, Texas. Texas State Museum of Asian Cultures. texasasianculturesmuseum.org. Corpus Christi, Texas. Texas State Railroad Palestine Depot. texasstater.com. Palestine, Texas. Texas State Railroad Rusk Depot. texasstater.com. Rusk, Texas. The Academy of Natural Sciences. answerc.org. St. Leonard, Maryland. The Academy of Natural Sciences. ansb.org. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The Anchorage Museum Imaginarium Discovery Center. anchoragemuseum.org. Anchorage, Alaska. The Arboretum at Fresno State. csufresno.edu/arboretum. Fresno, California. The Bailey Matthews National Shell Museum. shellmuseum.org. Sanibel, Florida. The Bakken. thebakken.org. Minneapolis, Minnesota. The Bishop Museum of Science and Nature. bishopscience.org. Bradenton, Florida. The Brevard Museum of History and Natural Science. brevardmuseum.com. Cocoa, Florida. The Cape Fear Botanical Garden. capefearbg.org. Fayetteville, North Carolina. The Children's Museum of Science and Technology. cmost.org. Troy, New York. The Children's Museum of Wilmington. playwilmington.org. Wilmington, North Carolina. The Children's Museum, Inc. the-childrens-museum.org. Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania. The Colorado Springs Children's Museum and Natural History Museum. Colorado Springs Children's Museum.com. Colorado Springs, Colorado. The Community Science Center. Harker Heights, Texas. The Cora Hartshorn Arboretum. hartshornarboretum.org. Short Hills, New Jersey. The Crosby Arboretum. crosbyarboretum.msstate.edu. Picayune, Mississippi. The Curran Homestead Living History Farm and Museum. curranhomestead.org. Orrington, Maine. The Delaware Children's Theatre. thechildrenstheatre.org. Wilmington, Delaware. The Dr. Pepper Museum and Free Enterprise Institute. drpeppermuseum.com. Waco, Texas. The Elliott Museum. hsmc-fl.com/elliott-museum. Stuart, Florida. The Florida Aquarium. flaquarium.org. Tampa, Florida. The Garden Club of Georgia, Inc. uga.edu/garden club. Athens, Georgia. The Health Museum. thehealthmuseum.org. Houston, Texas. The Health Museum. thehealthmuseum.org. Houston, Texas. The History Center in Tompkins County. tompkinscountyhistory.org. Ithaca, New York. The Little Nature Museum. littlenaturemuseum.org. Warner, New Hampshire. The Living Desert. livingdesert.org. Palm Desert, California. The Museum of Fine Arts, Houston. mfah.org. Houston, Texas. The Museum of Wildlife, Science, and Industry. Webster, South Dakota. The Nathan of Dorchester. skipjack-nathan.org. Cambridge, Maryland. The National Imperial Glass Museum. imperialglass.org/museum.hdm. Bel Air, Ohio. The National Watch and Clock Museum. museumoftime.org. Columbia, Pennsylvania. The Pember Nature Preserve. pembermuseum.com. East Hebron, New York. The Rocky Mount Children's Museum. web.enorthcarolina.org/net/org/info.aspx, s=44976.0.0.3. The Science Center of Iowa. cowa.org. Des Moines, Iowa. The Science Center of Southern Illinois. yoursciencecenter.com. Carbondale, Illinois. The Science Factory Children's Museum. sciencefactory.org. Eugene, Oregon. The Science Factory Children's Museum. sciencefactory.org. Eugene, Oregon. The Skyscraper Museum. skyscraper.org. New York, New York. The Southern California Medical Museum. socalmedicalmuseum.org. Riverside, California. The State Museum of Pennsylvania. statemusumpa.org. Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. The Tech Museum of Innovation. thetech.org. San Jose, California. The Timex Museum. timexpo.com. Waterbury, Connecticut. The University of Arizona College of Optical Sciences. optics.arizona.edu/museum. Tucson, Arizona. The Water Valley Casey Jones Railroad Museum. watervalley.net/users/caseyjones/home.hdm. Water Valley, Mississippi. The Weightlifting Hall of Fame. yorkbarbell.com. York, Pennsylvania. The Western North Carolina Nature Center. Asheville, North Carolina. The Witt Museum. wittmuseum.org. San Antonio, Texas. The Works. thurks.org. Bloomington, Minnesota. Thomas Edison National Historical Park. nps.gov/ATIS. West Orange, New Jersey. Thomas Warren Museum. thomas-warne-museum.com. Matawan, New Jersey. Toy Train Depot Museum and Train Ride. toytraindepot.homestead.com. Alamogordo, New Mexico. Tracy Aviary. tracyaviary.org. Salt Lake City, Utah. Trailside Nature and Science Center. Mountainside, New Jersey. Tree Hill Jacksonville's Nature Center. treehill.org. Jacksonville, Florida. Triangle Heritage Museum Association of the Cherokee Outlet. Cleveland, Oklahoma. Tucker Tower Nature Center. Ardmore, Oklahoma. Tucker Wildlife Sanctuary. tuckerwildlife.org. Majeska, California. Tulsa Air and Space Museum and Planetarium. tulsamuseum.org. Tulsa, Oklahoma. Tunica River Park and Museum. tunicariverpark.com. Robinsonville, Mississippi. Turtle Bay Exploration Park. turtlebay.org. Redding, California. 20th Century Technology Museum. 20thcenturytech.org. Warden, Texas. U.S. Spacewalk of Fame Museum. spacewalkoffame.com. Titusville, Florida. U.S. National Tick Collection. href = cosm.georgiasoutherн.edu/usntc. Statesboro, Georgia. U.S. Space and Rocket Center. spacecamp.com. Huntsville, Alabama. UC Herbarium. Berkeley, California. U.S. Army Air Defense Artillery Museum. SIL. Army.mil/Ada Museum. Lawton, Oklahoma. U.S. Army Field Artillery Museum. SIL. Army.mil/Fa Museum. Fort Sill, Oklahoma. U.S. Army Ordnance Museum. ordmusefound.org. Aberdeen, Maryland. UW Parkside Museum Studies Programs. uwp.edu/learn/programs/museums2ds.cfm. Kenosha, Wisconsin. Union County Historical Society. unioncountymuseum.com. Union, South Carolina. United States Naval Shipbuilding Museum. uss-salem.org. Quincy, Massachusetts. University of Alaska Museum of the North. uaf.edu/museum. Fairbanks, Alaska. University of Michigan Museum of Natural History. ummnh.org. Ann Arbor, Michigan. University of New Mexico Health Sciences Center Lee. Albuquerque, New Mexico. University of Northern Iowa Museum. library.uni.edu/museum. Cedar Falls, Iowa. University of Richmond Museums. museums.richmond.edu. Richmond, Virginia. Upper Swan Valley Historical Society Museum. SwanValleyHistoricalSociety.org. Condon, Montana. VT Institute of Natural Science. Woodstock, Vermont. Ventura County Discovery Center. VCDC.org. Thousand Oaks, California. Virginia Aquarium and Marine Science Center. VirginiaAquarium.com. Virginia Beach, Virginia. Virginia Living Museum. TheVLM.org. Newport News, Virginia. Virginia Mason Historical Archives. Seattle, Washington. Virginia Museum of Natural History. VMNH.net. Martinsville, Virginia. Virginia Museum of Transportation, Inc. VMT.org. Roanoke, Virginia. W. A. Gale Planetarium. Troy.edu/planetarium. Montgomery, Alabama. Wagner Free Institute of Science. WagnerFreeInstitute.org. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Wanapum Dam Heritage Center. gcpud.org/naturalresources/archaeology/wanapumheritagecenter.html. Ephrata, Washington. Warren Lash Conservation Center. Hunley.org/index.asp. North Charleston, South Carolina. Wasama Roundhouse State Historic Park. parks.ca.gov/default.asp?page _ID =5. Werner Wildlife Museum. caspercollege.edu/werner/index.html. Casper, Wyoming. West Bay Common School Children's Museum. aniroomschoolhouse.org. League City, Texas. West Kern Oil Museum. westkern-oilmuseum.org. Taft, California. West Point on the Eno. Durham, North Carolina. Western Museum of Mining and Industry. wmmi.org. Colorado Springs, Colorado. Western Spaceport Museum. Lompoc, California. Weymouth Woods Sandhill Nature Preserve. Southern Pines, North Carolina. Wheaton Arts. wheatonarts.org. Millville, New Jersey. Whitley County Hist. Museum. whitleymuseum.com. Columbia City, Indiana. Wild Basin Wilderness Preserve. wildbasin.org. Austin, Texas. Wildcare. wildsierrabaearea.org. San Rafael, California. Willard House and Clock Museum. willardhouse.org. North Grafton, Massachusetts. William H. Minor Agricultural Research Institute. whminor.org/heritageexhibit.html. Chazy, New York. William M. Sterkel Planetarium. Parkland.edu/cone/PLA. Champaign, Illinois. Willow Park Zoo. loganutah.org/parks_and/rec/willow_park/index.cfm. Logan, Utah. Winghaven Garden and Bird Sanctuary. winghavengardens.com. Charlotte, North Carolina. Wings Over Miami Air Museum. wingsovermiami.com. Miami, Florida. Vintertour Museum and Library. vintertour.org. Vintertour, Delaware. WonderLab Museum of Science, Health and Industry. wonderlab.org. Bloomington, Indiana. Wood Library Museum of Anesthesiology. woodlibrarymuseum.org. Schaumburg, Illinois. Woodman Institute Museum. woodmaninstitutemuseum.org. Dover, New Hampshire. Workingmen's Institute. New Harmony, Indiana. World Center for Birds of Prey. peregrinefund.org. Boise, Idaho. World Wildlife Museum. thewildlifemuseum.org. Stockton, California. World of Wonders Science Museum. wowsciencemuseum.org. Lodi, California. Worth Ranch Boy Scout Museum. Palo Pinto, Texas. Wyoming State Museum. wyomuseum.state.wy.us. Cheyenne, Wyoming. Yosemite Wildlife Museum. Merced, California. Youth Science Center. youthsciencecenter.org. Hacienda Heights, California. Youth Science Institute Alum Rock Nature Center. ysi-ca.org. San Jose, California. Youth Science Institute Sanborn Nature Center. ysi-ca.org. Saratoga, California. Youth Science Institute Vasona Nature Center. ysi-ca.org. Los Gatos, California. Zion's Gateway to the Stars. Orderville, Utah. Zoo Tampa at Lowry Park. zootampa.org. Tampa, Florida. Zool Museum, home of the Zool Collection. nmsu.edu/zool. Las Cruces, New Mexico. marinersmuseum.org. Newport News, Virginia. Chapter 3. A list of United States science and natural history museums. acnatsci.org, Academy of Natural Sciences. aerospace.org, Aerospace Education Center. computerhistory.org, Computer Museum History Center. dmns.org, Denver Museum of Nature and Science. exploratorium.edu. hmns.org, Houston Museum of Natural Science. isis.csu.hayward.edu/ce-smith/acesmith.html, Smith Museum of Anthropology. kennedyspace-center.com, Kennedy Space Center. kennedyspace-center.com/visit ksc/attractions/fame.asp, Astronaut Hall of Fame. miamici.org, Miami Museum of Science. momath.org, National Museum of Mathematics. msichicago.org, Museum of Science and Industry. nasm.si.edu, National Air and Space Museum. old-computers.com/museum/default.asp, Obsolete Computers Museum, Apple IIE, Commodore 64 and more. omsi.edu, Oregon Museum of Science and Industry. peabody.yale.edu, Yale Peabody Museum. science-tech.englsh.ca/index.cfm, Canada Science and Technology Museum. sln.fi.edu, Franklin Institute Science Museum. spacecenter.org, Houston Space Center. thetech.org, Tech Museum of Innovation. triscience.org. vlmp.museofile.org/computing.html, Virtual Museum of Computing, History. A. Adventure Science Center. 800 Fort Negley Boulevard, Nashville, TN. AdventureCI.org. Aerospace Discovery at Florida Air Museum. 4175 Medulla Road, Lakeland, FL. .sunandfun.org. Air Zoo. 6151 Portage Road, Portage, MI. airzoo.org. Alden B. Dow Museum of Science and Art. 1801 West St. Andrews Road, Midland, MI. mcfta.org. Amazement Square. 27 9th Street, Lynchburg, VA. amazementstour.org. American Museum of Natural History. Central Park West at 79th Street, NYC. amnh.org. American Museum of Science and Energy. 300 South Tulane Avenue, Oak Ridge, TN. amsc.org. Anchorage Museum at Rasmussen Center. 625 C Street, Anchorage, AK. anchoragemuseum.org. Ann Arbor Hands-On Museum. 220 East Ann Street, Ann Arbor, MI. AOM.org. Anniston Museum of Natural History. 800 Museum Drive, Anniston, AL. AnnistonMuseum.org. Arizona Science Center. 600 East Washington Street, Phoenix, AZ. azscience.org. Aspen Science Center. POG 4669. Aspen, CO. aspensciencecenter.org. Astronaut Memorial Planetarium and Observatory. Eastern Florida State College. 1519 Clear Lake Road, Cocoa, FL. easternflorida.edu. Barlow Planetarium at UW Fox Valley. 1478 Midway Road, Menasha, WI. barlowplanetarium.org. Bay Area Discovery Museum. 557 McReynolds Road, Sausalito, CA. baykidsmuseum.org. Bell Museum of Natural History. University of Minnesota. 10 Church Street Southeast, Minneapolis, MN. bellmuseum.org. Berkshire Museum. 39 South Street Route 7, Pittsfield, MA. berkshiremuseum.org. Betty Bryn Children's Museum. 929 East Wisconsin Avenue, Milwaukee, WI. bbcmkids.org. Birch Aquarium at Scripps. 2300 Expedition Way, La Jolla, CA. aquarium.ucsd.edu. Bishop Museum. 1525 Bernice Street, Honolulu, Hi. bishopmuseum.org. Black Hills State University, Sanford Center for Science Education. 1200 University Unit 9005. Spearfish, SD. sanfordlab.org. BNL Science Learning Center. Brookhaven National Laboratory. Building 935. Upton, New York. bnl.gov. Bunshoft Museum of Discovery. Dayton Society of Natural History. 2600 Dewey's Parkway, Dayton, O. Boonshoftmuseum.org. Boothiel Youth Museum. 700A North Douglas, Malden, MO. BoothelioUTHmuseum.org. Boston Children's Museum. 308 Congress Street, Boston, MA. BostonChildren'sMuseum.org.